Hello, Twitter. This is Bishop Ronnie Crudup, Senior Pastor of New Horizon Church International here in Jackson, Mississippi, and I want to welcome you back once again to this Twitter Tuesday, and appreciate each one of you tuning me in. Today, I want to really, as a challenge, ask the question, what can you and I do, every person that is watching today, what is it that we can do to change things now? You know, I think all of us understand that we're living in certainly less than perfect circumstances. You know, we got a lot of problems in our community, our neighborhood, in this nation, and the world. And we do a lot of complaining about things, but a lot of times we never get down to solution things. We never get down to the things in a sense that really does make change. And so my question to you is, what can we do to make change now? What is it that each one of us can do to make change? Now, I was having a conversation with a couple of good friends of mine, and both of them are white. They're older men, and we were talking about the circumstance that we're in here in Jackson, Mississippi. And they said, well, what do you think needs to be done? And so I want to share a thought with you of what I gave to them, because I really do believe the things that I shared with them are things that are something that every one of us can do to make the circumstances different, okay, and better. Because I also come from this whole point that every one of us is a change agent. That's right. Every one of us is a change agent. God has left us here to make change, to make things better. And every one of us has power. Because when you really define power, what is power anyway? But the ability to make change, the ability to change things for the better. And so every one of us has a level of power. Now you can say, I need more, I don't have much. But still, you have some power, you have some influence, you can make change now. So two things that I want to encourage everybody to do, and hopefully you will push this to somebody else as well. Number one, we can make a decision to change our present circumstance and environment around us. And when I'm talking about change, I'm particularly talking about the community. I'm not just talking about your own little individual circumstance, but I'm talking about the community around you. So one of the things that we can do is you can determine that you're going to make sure that the environment that you're in is clean. Okay? So on your street, in your neighborhood, you keep your yard clean, you keep your yard cut and edged. You move trash out the way, you pick trash up, you know, limbs, all of these kind of things like that. You just are a part of, if you will, the general improvement group in your neighborhood, on your block. If nobody else does it, then you got to start. That you're going to improve the environment around you. You're going to encourage your children to follow that up and do their part with it. And you're going to encourage everybody else as well. I was talking to someone who was from South Jackson just the other day, and who grew up here, but now they live in another part of the country. They came back, they looked and said, wow, this is not South Jackson that I grew up in. And they said, what in the world happened? Well, what happened was, sadly, the people, honestly, who happened to be white, who were the standard bearers, they were the people who had a passion for their community, who were doing work. Those folks moved. And when those folks moved, the neighborhood association didn't function anymore. No one got out there anymore, picked, you know, the trash up. Nobody else cut, you know, the grass that wasn't theirs. Nobody else did things for the general improvement and welfare of the general community. And so the neighborhood began to suffer from it. And particularly people who weren't very strong, who didn't necessarily see themselves as the leaders, but they were following, then they stopped following altogether. And particularly if they had a couple of people on the side of them in that neighborhood who weren't doing much to contribute, or they were contributing in a negative way, they just began to acquiesce to those folks, and they gave up. They stopped having hope. And so we got to turn that around, okay? Because, you know, one of the things I remember years ago, particularly during the time when I grew up, when we didn't have as much as we have now, that mama and grandmama and others would say this: listen, I don't care how much you got. Even if you don't have but a little bit, you can keep it clean, okay? Whatever you got, you can keep it nice. And so the issue is not having a whole lot. The issue is taking care of what you have. If you don't take care of a little bit, then the biblical principle is you're not going to get a lot. And so I want to challenge everybody, start first in your own neighborhood and start making some change and encourage other people and start being the standard bearer, okay? Start being the person that everybody else ought to emulate, the person who is the model, the person, once again, who is really, if you will, following Christ and who's going to be the change agent. The second thing I want to encourage you to do is it's an economic thing. It's to understand that, particularly in the African American community, until we build our business class, until we get more African American businesses going, then we're never going to flourish in our community the way that we need to. You know, sometimes, particularly among poor folks, we think that government makes things happen. The reality is government doesn't really bring economic change. Now, there's a part that government plays. But the truth is businesses really make things happen. And so when you look at these surrounding communities, whether it's Madison County, whether it's in Rankin County, and all of these dynamic things that are happening, then the truth is businesses, private businesses did that, and they got help from the government. If we don't build our business class, the African American business class up inside of the city of Jackson and otherwise, then we're never going to really flourish the way that we need to. One of the real indictments against this city, and this is an indictment against the mayor, this is an indictment against every city council person as well, and others, is this. Here it is, we're in an 80% African American city, and most of our business is done with white contractors, white businesses. That's an indictment. And until we change that, that's just one place it starts, but until we change that, and until everybody out there demands that more of the share of business dollars that are spent in this city goes to African American businesses, then nothing's really going to change. We will always be beholden to other folk. And here are people who have left the city, and we're doing all of our business with them. Now, what kind of sense does that make? Well, you and I have got to make some demands, okay? And we got to demand of our city officials. Let's not talk about state and other folks now. They've got theirs too. But let's start at home. Let's start with the mayor and the city council, and let's demand that, and by the way, there are contracts that they don't even have to bid them out. They can determine who that goes to, okay? Then let's demand that a big majority of that looks like the demographics of the city. We can start there. Let's demand that these folks be more conscious before they go off and hire some other folks in other places in terms of these things, that it looks like our folks that once again are going to support our community. And so two things today. Boy, I could talk about this a long time. But the truth is, two things that we can do to make change. One's an economic development thing. Let's demand that our business class grows, and that in the city that we're in, we're going to do more business with African American businesses. The second thing is, let's determine that we're in and that we're going to start cleaning things up where we are, and then encourage, push, and demand that others do the same. If we did these things, listen, we started seeing some change this week. I'm Bishop Ronnie, Crudup, Senior Pastor of New Horizon Church International here in Jackson, Mississippi. And until the next time, remember, count it all joy.